It looks like the location for WrestleMania 41 may have just been revealed. This, according to a new report from FightfulSelect.com. Fans have gone back and forth about many cities, including Las Vegas, where the WrestleMania press conference this year was held. But it looks like we have some clarity about that situation, and I'm going to tell you what it means, how WrestleMania could come across, and so much more. Also going to be talking about news coming out from Ronda Rousey's new memoir, where she has a lot to say about WWE, her time there, and specifically one person high up in WWE who she does not like. All that and much more coming up in this video. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Okay, so without further ado, according to FightfulSelect.com, it looks like the frontrunner for WrestleMania 41 is Minneapolis, Minnesota. That seems to be the case. We have heard, going back as far as a couple of months ago, that Minneapolis was in play. Of course, WrestleMania has never been held in Minneapolis, so this would be a very new location for this event. Again, 41 WrestleMania or 40 WrestleManias up until this point, never in Minneapolis, so a little bit of history there. And on top of that, you have a WrestleMania being held in a very new facility in the US Bank Arena up there in Minneapolis. So huge news potentially for the Twin Cities. The report from FightfulSelect.com also notes how several government officials have kind of been hinting towards this. There was even a meeting last week, if you were paying attention to that news, that the local government there had actually, kind of hinted towards, hey, we're going to be bringing a lot more events here to Minneapolis. Be ready to see Super Bowls, be ready to see NCAA tournaments, be ready to see WrestleManias. And then got a little chuckle from everyone in the crowd. So obviously, big news for that city. Big news for the WWE. I think one of the things that this has solidified in the past few years, honestly, it's solidified, is there is a bidding war for WrestleMania. And from a business side for WWE, that is a very good thing. It is good that your brand is big enough that it warrants a bidding war. And for those of you who might wonder, well, why are cities, bidding for WrestleMania? Why are they trying to make sure and invest all this money into potentially getting WrestleMania? The reason is pretty simple. It's because when you host big events like the Super Bowl, like WrestleMania, so on, what happens is a lot of people flock to that arena, or excuse me, that area. They flock to that city, and it props up local business. When you have an influx of people who are staying there, booking hotels, eating there in that city, what it does is it causes people to spend money, and it boosts money into the local economy. It boosts money into local businesses, and that can be a very good thing. Now, of course, there's a whole different argument about whether or not cities should be bidding on these things and prioritizing them over things like social programs and whatnot, and that is a conversation that I am more than willing to have. However, for the purpose of this video, I do think that, noting that there is a business side and a reason and an incentive for these cities to bid on WrestleMania is very important. And Minnesota seems to have, made it very clear that WrestleMania 41 is something they want held in Minnesota. At a certain point, we thought it could be potentially Las Vegas. That was a bit of a red herring with that press conference they had out there in Vegas. I think, a lot of it also was the fact that the Super Bowl was being held there at the same time, and WWE probably wanted to, and they definitely wanted to, kind of take advantage of the media that were present there already for the Super Bowl, have them come in. Of course, you have Pat McAfee, who was there for Super Bowl week, and there was a bit of cross-promotion there. It just made a lot of sense to host that press conference at the Super Bowl, or at least close to the Super Bowl, during Super Bowl week, so that you kind of made your own media circus in a way. And it worked. It was a successful experiment, and it worked. And if I'm WWE, if I'm AEW even, that's something I want to do for every big show. There's a big game, there's an NCAA tournament if you're AEW, or if you're WWE, the Super Bowl, use that as the time and the place for your big press conference, for your big show. I think that is perfect. Like for AEW, use All-Star Weekend to build up All In. Do that. Use MLB All-Star Weekend to build up All In. And then that could potentially like bring some value and bring some eyeballs, I should say, to that product that wouldn't otherwise be there. Like there's a lot of things you can do. Now, kind of switching gears to like what it's going to be like. I don't think it's really going to be affected too much by the weather. That's something that people have brought up. Like, oh man, how are they having WrestleMania in a cold city? It's only cold if you're outside. Luckily for them, the stadium is indoors, so there's not going to be much of an issue there. But all in all, huge win for Minneapolis potentially here, and could be interesting for WrestleMania. I'm really interested to see what the design of that new WrestleMania logo is going to be. Going to have like the Viking inspired thing, or maybe they go with the Timberwolves. Although, yeah, the Timberwolves would be that'd be a cool design. Let me know what design you'd like to see. What sports team would you like to see represented at WrestleMania? Moving on, we have to talk about Ronda Rousey calling out WWE once again. So earlier this week, I made a video about Ronda Rousey calling out WWE, specifically Vince McMahon, and saying what a lot of people kind of quietly believe about Vince McMahon, that he is essentially Emperor Palpatine. She literally wrote that in her new memoir. And it had a lot of people, going back and forth about, was Ronda right to say this? Were her criticisms valid? Well, it wasn't the only criticism she levied the way of WWE. She did accuse John Laurinaitis of being, quote, a frat boy. Let's talk about it. So in her new memoir, Our Fight, she says the following about former WWE talent relations head John Laurinaitis, and I quote, "He looked and acted like an entitled 60-year-old former frat boy, whereas Triple H looked for talent and potential in NXT prospects. It appeared that John Laurinaitis looked for FUCK ability." Okay. Now, if you have been paying attention to anything that people have been saying about John Laurinaitis for years, going back to his peers like Bruce Pritchard, JR, and so on, this comes to no surprise. There have been a lot of stories about John Laurinaitis, and especially like around WWE divas. He would select them based solely off of the way they looked, would not take talent into account, and he was a bit of a, well, he was kind of disgusting in a lot of ways. And the Vince lawsuit, where he is accused of doing horrible things to a former WWE employee by the name of Janelle Grant, kind of cements that, and that's his legacy now. And what Ronda is saying here is that he just kind of acted like an immature child. He acted like he's 60 years old. He acted like he was 16. And, and I'd argue that there's a lot of behavior that John Laurinaitis exhibited that allegedly from that lawsuit that, even a 16-year-old wouldn't do. So what is this? Like, is this news? Obviously it is. I think it's just adding on to the things that we already know, that the culture in WWE for a very long time was toxic, especially towards women, and that a lot of times people like John Laurinaitis, who were in positions of power, abuse that power. And instead of focusing on how can we make the company better, the focus was on, who am I most attracted to? The focus was on, what can I get out of this? It was a selfish, perverse, desire-driven business. And it is a good thing that the business, hopefully, I'm fingers crossed, there's only so much you can change in the little amount of time that's been had since this lawsuit, but like hopefully it's changing for the better. But Ronda is right to call this out. And this is no different. Again, this is no different. There are going to be a lot of people who are saying, oh, Ronda's just, how dare she say this about WWE? This is no different than what a lot of people have been saying about John Laurinaitis. We have known that John Laurinaitis was a creep for a long time. This should come to no surprise. We have known that Vince McMahon was a creep for a long time. There is I think there's like a weird desire amongst wrestling fans to kind of not talk about that kind of stuff. And like, oh man, like, yeah, but focus on the wrestling. Okay, you can have a conversation about focusing just on wrestling, but then you also have to think about like what did John Laurinaitis really contribute to the wrestling business? Because his reputation, a lot of his reputation is based on, and even before the allegations came forward, a lot of his reputation was he likes hot divas. That was it. He likes hot divas, and he was eyeing for JR's job. And he loved to fire people that Vince told him to fire. Tell me when I'm telling lies. They literally made a storyline out of it. That's how like relevant that talking point was. So again, there's a lot of stuff that's going to come out from this lawsuit. I believe John Laurinaitis this week even, acknowledged the lawsuit. And he has in his own way been trying to cover his own butt with this lawsuit. He has been accusing Vince McMahon of making him a victim, which is pretty rich, if you ask me. But we will see. We'll see if what happens with this lawsuit. But I mean, Ronda, this is no surprise to anyone. I mean, former frat boy, by all allegations and all reports, he was acting like a frat boy still to this day. But we'll see what happens here. Guys, let me know what you think about this in the comment section. Let me know what you think about Minneapolis hosting WrestleMania. I'm interested to hear all about that. Be sure to also smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Until next time, keep it real.